Alright guys, now as you can see the new Call of Duty launched, but actually running it might not be as simple as we think. Even though I have an RTX 2080 Ti, on this kind of monitor, which is a 3440 by 1440p at 100 Hz, that's not enough for, if you want to mess the settings. And that's why we have right here this RTX 3090. Now let's see if this is actually necessary if you want to play this game at max settings. Let's get right into it. Now some of you might be wondering, hey, why are we even talking about it? We have an RTX 2080 Ti, it should be plenty fine. Well, that's because this game actually has ray tracing. And out of the box, it ships with DLSS enabled on this GPU. And now what this does is, since we have DLSS, we are able to run ray tracing without stuttering. But since we have it, we have that occasional stutter, we have that occasional resolution drop. And if you're playing competitively, like I will probably start to do again, that's really a problem. So now let's quickly check how it plays in the out-of-the-box settings, and then we'll take a look at what happens if we disable DLSS, and then we'll simply do the upgrade. So let's get right into it. Alright guys, now I just got done testing the game on my RTX 2080 Ti, and well, now I will show you the results. Basically, out of the box, the game is set to run with ray tracing and DLSS enabled. Now by testing that with everything to the max, except for motion blur, because again, we are COD players, we don't want motion blur, to the max, we scored with an i9-9900K, 32 gigs of RAM. We scored on our 2080 Ti 97 average FPS, then 56 for the 1% low, and then 30 for the 0.1% low. Now there wasn't any noticeable stuttering, the game was playable, but as you can see, we did not come even like on the average frame rate to the actual cap of our monitor, which is 100. So that's pretty bad. And actually, since there is DLSS enabled, now DLSS is an upscaling technology. That means that the image will be rendered at like 1080p, and then it will be upscaled. Now, what this does is it basically reduces the image quality during the game when it should stutter, to say. So when you have less performance, the image drops. Now this technology though isn't perfect, and sometimes there is the occasional stutter. So this wasn't the best experience. Then we tried to get a better image and to avoid, getting those drops, to just play with max settings, ray tracing enabled. And well, that didn't go that well. We basically got 62 FPS on average, 30 FPS on the 1% low, and just 12 on the 0.1% low. The stuttering was noticeable. I wouldn't play the game like that, even in public games, not the best. Now at this point, I was like, well, if the problem is ray tracing, then let's just disable ray tracing and run all the rest to the max without DLSS. So I did that, and well, we got 102 average FPS, which is over the cap of our monitor, so that's good. Then we got 52 on the 1% low, and then 19 on the 0.1% low. Now at first it was like, it might be run-to-run variance, and then so you rerun the test. But basically the 0.1% low are consistently lower if we do not have ray tracing on, but we have everything to the max, and we don't have DLSS. So basically the 0.1% lows are lower than if we have ray tracing on and DLSS on. Now that didn't really make sense at first, but then I thought about it, and what happens is when it should drop the resolution with DLSS, it actually drops the FPS here. So in those very cranked situations, I was playing hardpoint in the whole testing. Basically, if we have a lot of explosions, etc., that's when it drops out basically. And so yeah, that wasn't really the best option. So now we will simply slot in that 3090 and see if we manage to play it on max setting with that. Let's get right into it. It's actually a couple of days later and I finally got done with my testing. Now, since I've been playing the game quite a bit and I've been also streaming it on Twitch, I believe I can kind of understand when it's stuttering and when it's actually good to play it, even competitively, because I've been doing some GB. Well, now here we are with the numbers. With DLSS and ray tracing on at the same time, we got to 140 average FPS, 74 on the 1% low, and 41 on the 0.1% low. This was quite the increase, but again, I don't really recommend playing with DLSS, so I just put it there to compare it. But again, I would avoid this one. Then, and this is where it gets really interesting, we got 111 average FPS with ray tracing on. Like, ray tracing has improved so much with RTX 3000, it's unreal. We got double the FPS pretty much of my 2080 Ti with ray tracing on. Now it's actually playable with everything to the max, ray tracing on and non-DLSS for competitive play with 100 Hz on this kind of monitor, which means that you can literally play it maxed out on a 120 Hz 4K TV. It's simply insane. Like, I was truly impressed. Then, with everything to the max and ray tracing disabled, and again, this is quite interesting, we got to 126. So just around 10% more than with ray tracing on. This means that turning on ray tracing just has around a 10% performance hit. Truly interesting. Then we got 86 on the 1% low and 49 on the 0.1% low. What does this mean pretty much? This means that, well, if you want to play with ray tracing on and everything to the max, then yeah, you need a 3090 actually. And to be honest, coming into this review, I kind of doubt that we would actually have been able to play with everything to the max and ray tracing on while still competitively gaming. That's really surprising. But then again, what I will be personally be doing is actually playing with ray tracing off. Now, why is that? I mean, it only takes 10% off, right? That's because by playing the game competitively, I found that even though ray tracing is beautiful, it actually isn't the best. In some situations, the shadows are too dark because they are realistic, and so I can't see my enemies. So I'd rather get the less realistic experience, but with the performance advantage. Now, since this is the case, I think it's a nice thing to actually talk about how I would play the game competitively, and that is with shadows to the minimum, because that gets us better visibility, but then again with stuff like the textures and the anti-aliasing to the max, because it's easier to spot enemies. And then again, we will turn off things like volumetric lights and stuff. Now, by doing that, it is actually more than possible to get a very good playable experience on this kind of monitor, which again is 3440 by 1440p, or on a 4K monitor at a higher FPS. For example, with our 2080 Ti, we got 148 average FPS, 92 on the 1% low, and 64 on the 0.1% lows, while having those competitive settings on. Now, if we play with competitive settings, the 3090 is pretty much useless. Again, if we put on the competitive settings on the 3090, we get around 200 average FPS. Now that means that, well, we can also use a 200 Hz monitor. So if you have that, you need a 3090 for that. But now again, seeing that, if you're just playing the game competitively, even if you have a 4K screen or a very high-end screen, you truly don't need to go higher than a 3070 or a 2080 Ti, because they are pretty much the same card. Now, there is another situation in which you need a 3090 if you're playing Call of Duty Cold War, and that is quite simply if you're streaming. Now, I've been streaming quite a bit on Twitch, as I told you before, and well, streaming takes quite the hit out of your graphics card, and without the 3090 you probably would not be able to stream properly while still gaming competitively. Because again, even if I was playing with competitive settings, if I was streaming on the 2080 Ti, sometimes I'd get under 100 FPS, and that's the refresh rate of my monitor, so we never want to go under that. And that's why if you're streaming, you would actually need competitive settings. Actually, you can play with max settings on the 3090 and stream and still get 100 Hz. So that's when I'd see a 3090 as necessary. But with that aside, I believe that tuning your settings is what matters the most. Well guys, that's about it. Now let me know if you liked it, let me know if you're playing Cold War, and if you are, what GPU you're running. And well, if you have any request for any kind of video, just leave it down there. I will do my best to provide it. See you in the next one, guys. Bye. Oh, and basically, yeah, I was reading my benchmark numbers from here. I just slotted it on my 3090.